All right, folks, this is the Polysign update, one of the most important videos that I've made in a very long time. Many people in our community have invested in Polysign, and I wish that I had good news for you guys. I'm just going to be very honest, and we're going to get straight on into it. I wish I had good news. This is not looking good. Now, much of the information that I'm going to share with you guys is public, but I am going to let you know that I did have someone reach out to me over the past couple days and share with me some information that kind of confirms some of our worst fears and suspicions about what is going on at Polysign and the future of Polysign and what's going to happen with the investors of Polysign. So I want to get right on into this, but I do want to make it clear, guys, this is a massive acquisition for Ripple and great news for Ripple. The acquisition of Standard Custody and Trust with CEO Jack McDonald going to move over to Ripple, and basically he's going to be the SVP of stablecoins. Massive deal. And the reason why is because Standard Custody and Trust had the licenses in New York. Now that the New York Department of Financial Services has approved the sale of Standard Custody and Trust to Ripple, that is done, fully executed. What this gives Ripple is another license in New York, a critical jurisdiction for them to acquire one of these licenses. And the reason why the trust company is so important is because this is where they can hold the collateral for the stablecoin that they've just launched. Ripple, RLUSD, right? Real USD. And for other tokenized assets, you would be able to put that collateral at that trust company and it would be fully compliant with New York state laws. Very, very massive deal. And this is great news for Ripple. As far as Polysign goes, we're going to get right on into it. This whole saga started basically last November, December, when a auction notice went public, and basically it said, hey, the assets under Polysign are going to be auctioned off here, and this Boathouse Capital, who gave the loan to Polysign to buy MG Stover, is calling the loan due, and basically they've breached the covenant. They're calling the loan, and they're going to be auctioning off the assets that they put up as collateral. Now, I'm going to show you the original article here from Boathouse Capital is still up to this day. You guys can go to Boathouse Capital yourselves, and you can see this is from April 22nd, 2022. Boathouse Capital completes growth investment in digital asset infrastructure leader Polysign. Now, the big reason, the company utilized the capital to acquire top digital asset fund administrator MG Stover. MG Stover is an industry leader in digital fund administration with an impressive client base, including more than 40 billion in digital assets under administration, the world's largest by a wide margin. So this was a massive acquisition for Polysign. Polysign acquires MG Stover with this loan from Boathouse Capital. Polysign did not actually miss payments on this loan, but they did breach one or some of the covenants that were part of this loan. And basically, the covenant is just basically kind of the rules and the parameters set forth in the contract for this loan agreement. And so even though Polysign, according to my source, was making payments on time, the covenant was breached. This forced, and basically Boathouse Capital decided to call the loan due. And this is where the auction notice came out. Now, this is the auction notice right here. And this is newsbtc.com from 6 months ago. Polysign public auction notice of foreclosure sale, Polysign Inc. Now, this auction never took place. They ended up going into an agreement with them. Polysign went into an agreement with Boathouse Capital, and they were able to get a deal done here that basically sold off all of the assets and split up all of the assets here. Now, as you can note in this notice, they say that there was a loan agreement between Polysign or the pledger, okay? And it include a couple different agreements: the Polysign IP security agreement, the MG Stover IP security agreement, the IP security agreements, and the assets pledged thereunder, the IP assets by and among MG Stover LLC. Now, when you scroll on down here, you actually see that there are 6 different entities right here that make up this Polysign company. Polysign Cayman, Polysign International, another Cayman Islands exempted company, Standard Custody and Trust, LLC, a New York limited liability company, Polysign Capital, LLC, a Wyoming LLC, AtomicNet, Inc., a Delaware corporation, and Polysign Acquisitions, Inc., a Delaware corporation. Now, when you add in MG Stover, that is the seventh entity. So when you put all this together, there's basically, 6, 7 entities that make up this Polysign company. Now, I had the opportunity and I almost did invest in Polysign myself. I, just like many of you guys, thought this looked really promising. This looked really great. Jack McDonald's an absolute legend in the space. His track record's incredible. There's other members of the company that were just big hitters. It really looked like a promising deal. And my assumption was that by investing in Polysign, you were investing in the MG Stover business, the fund administrator. You were investing in Standard Custody, the custody and the trust company with the licenses, right? And that you were investing in AtomicNet and the patents and the IP and that technology for custody, right? I assumed that by investing in Polysign, you were getting ownership in all of this, all of these different verticals. I had assumed was under the Polysign umbrella. And maybe at one time they were, but at the end of the day, what happened here is that these assets were pledged in this loan to Boathouse Capital. And Boathouse Capital provides private equity and private credit. They're basically a VC fund that loans money to startups and tech companies and SaaS companies like Polysign. They didn't have to do this, but they decided, hey, they breached the covenant. We're calling the loan due. We're selling assets. And what ended up happening is they acquired MG Stover. Standard Custody and Trust is now being bought out by Ripple. And what's left is Polysign and AtomicNet, the IP, the patents, and whatever else is left at that company. But basically, Polysign, as I thought it included all of these entities, all of these verticals, and it was this full encompassing business. And as we highlighted, MG Stover was literally the largest fund administrator in the world, industry leader. And what they did is they helped basically VCs, private equity firms, handle the administrative side of their business, right? So the private equity guys could focus on, other aspects of the business, getting investors, finding new opportunities. MG Stover handled all the administrative stuff. Great business, industry leader, massive acquisition. But then we come fast forward here, and all of the assets are being split up and sold off. Assets that were very valuable. Now, this is what came out from Link2. Link2 shared this, and this was a few months ago. I think this actually came out in December. But I'm going to show you this. They say, as you know from Ripple's announcement last week, Polysign sold its Standard Custody and Trust subsidiary to Ripple. The sale is subject to approval. Yep, we know this. And now this deal has gone through, right? This deal is done. Polysign will be receiving a combination of cash and Ripple equity as sale consideration, the magnitude which cannot be disclosed until it is approved. Well, I do have the amounts. I'm not going to disclose that here, but I do have the amounts that they were paid as far as how much cash they were paid and how much in Ripple equity they were paid. That deal is done, and they did receive cash and Ripple equity. That's done. Polysign has satisfied all its obligations to lender Boathouse Capital through a partial cash payment and the transfer of ownership of Polysign's MG Stover subsidiary to Boathouse. So as I was saying, MG Stover is now Boathouse Capital's. Consequently, Boathouse no longer has a lien on Polysign's assets. So Polysign satisfied Boathouse Capital in this deal, their obligations, by selling, basically giving them MG Stover, and by selling off Standard Custody and Trust to Ripple. Now, going on, Polysign retains full ownership of its IP, specifically as this relates to its crypto custody technology and its AtomicNet blockchain protocol. Polysign will continue to explore opportunities to commercialize and monetize this IP to the benefit of shareholders. Well, here's the problem. And here's the main claim that the person who reached out to me, here's the main claim that they had. There's a lot that I'm not going to share with you guys. I got to be careful out of respect. They want to remain anonymous, and I got to be careful about what I say here. But what I am allowed to say is that essentially there was next to no customers for Polysign's custody solution and Atomic Net. There was nearly none. None of the big institutions. You guys know my deal. With every crypto project, I ask one question. Who the heck is using this project and this token that actually matters? In the case of Polysign, there wasn't much. There wasn't many. My source is telling me that he knew of, one or two, and they were paying, a very small amount, thousands of bucks per month, which for a company of Polysign size, that ain't paying the bills. That ain't getting anything done. And I was told that basically there was no interest. That's the main claim that this source that I have reached out to me and shared with me, along with some other stuff. But I just want to stick to that main claim that they said. And we can take it with a grain of salt. Maybe he's just disgruntled. Maybe he's not happy. I don't know. But this is what I was told. And I have an obligation to my community, my audience, my friends, who I know invested in this company. I mean, we've all been watching Polysign. We all had huge expectations for Polysign. And what I'm going to play for you next is Jack McDonald at XRP Las Vegas last year. And I recall getting all sorts of hyped up and excited after what Jack McDonald had to say last year. They specifically, this is when it started to circulate this idea of a tuck-in acquisition. And basically they were suggesting that one of the big banks or institutions, one of the likely outcomes would be for them to acquire Polysign, because it would be easier for a big institution to basically buy this technology, buy this solution, versus go build it themselves. That makes sense. And maybe that will still happen. Maybe the IP, maybe what's left in Polysign and Atomic Net, maybe it still will be acquired. I'm not going to rule that out. I don't know with 100% certainty that won't happen. That is still a possibility. More on that later. But I'm going to play this clip. This is after Jack McDonald basically says that the tuck-in acquisition is what they're expecting. And then he's asked directly, who are your customers? Who are your clients? We know you can't say names specifically, but any governments, any CBDC. And I want you to listen closely to what Jack McDonald says in this clip, because he explains the different verticals of the business, MG Stover, Standard Custody and Trust, and Polysign Atomic Net. But specifically on the Atomic Net portion, they had clients at MG Stover. They had clients for Standard Custody and Trust. But they did not, from my source, and from what you can hear from Jack McDonald, they didn't have really any clients from Atomic Net to name, to speak of. And you'll hear him say, potential clients, the possibility of these types of banks, these types of institutions. And looking back over a year later, and looking back, and I'm thinking of, me and everybody else in the room at XRP Las Vegas, I think that this really just slipped by all of us. We were really excited. Jack was saying some stuff, and everybody else, the energy, XRP Las Vegas was really great, right? But this just completely slid by us. And looking back and listening to this now, I'm like, oh crap, how did we not see this? They didn't have anybody to speak of as far as clients for the Atomic Net, the software portion of the Polysign custody solution. They didn't really have anybody. I'm going to play this clip for you guys. This is Jack McDonald last year at XRP Las Vegas, and he's asked about their clients. Listen in.
And for greater context, we know you can't share who your customers are, but can you give some transparency to the types and sizes of the companies you work with? Any governments or CBDCs?
Yeah, so 3 different businesses. In the custody business, standard custody, it's all institutional. So by our charter, we don't support retail directly, and that threshold is an accredited investor and beyond. The market structure is changing in digital assets and crypto, and more of our clients, we think going forward, are going to be channel partners, if you will, exchanges, trading desks, DeFi platforms, lending platforms, et cetera, in addition to crypto native funds or traditional investors who want to buy and hold a digital asset. In the fund administration business, it's funds who invest for the most part, not exclusively, but for the most part in digital assets, Web3, crypto, both liquid and illiquid. So it's venture capital, it's private equity funds, it's some family offices. Increasingly, we're starting to work with some pensions and endowments or corporates. And then on the atomic net side, that's really a wide range of potential participants. That will be individual investors, it will be service providers, it will be market structure players who could be exchanges, could be clearinghouses, could be any number of just different global infrastructure sort of providers who need the sort of toolkit that our engineers have been building.
Excellent.
Could be. Potential. When you look back on that and you listen, and it's like, okay, dang, you see it now, right? I have tremendous respect for Jack, everybody at Ripple. This is a great deal. This is a great deal for Ripple. This is bullish for my thesis on Ripple, for XRP. This is all really great over there. The questions that I'm left with now is, what is left at Polysign? What IP, what patents, what is left? And 2, what's going to happen with the investors? It's very clear to me that this entity was not the main entity that had all these parts of this business, or at one point maybe they did, but part of this entity and part of their assets and part of their business were split off. And for whatever reason, however it happened, whoever approved this deal, whoever decided to put up as collateral all these assets, this deal fell apart. Now those assets are gone. MG Stover stripped away. And you listen to Jack. They had clients for MG Stover, pension funds, endowments. He was listing them off. For Standard Custody and Trust, listing them off. When it came to Atomic Net, could be, potential. And for my source, there's next to none. Next to none. Now, couple things that I want to share with you guys that reiterate this point. David Schwartz was asked if Standard Custody and Trust was a competitor to Medico. And we now know that this deal has gone through. And I want you guys to see his response. He says, to some extent, yes, they're not exact competitors because Standard Custody is a custodian and Medico is a technology provider. A Ripple Polysign deal wasn't a good fit because Polysign's roadmap leads in a different direction from Ripple's. And this is another thing that my sources confirmed is, and basically we can see the writings on the wall, because Ripple acquired Medico and they didn't acquire Polysign. They didn't acquire Atomic Net. What they acquired was Standard Custody and Trust. And those licenses was the key thing right there, right? They really wanted those licenses, and that's a big deal. Whatever they paid for those licenses, I think was 100% worth it, whatever that price was. Which I do know what the price was, but I'm not going to disclose it here. The problem is that Standard Custody and Trust was using Polysign, Atomic Net, and that software as a service, right? They were using that software for Standard Custody and Trust. That's not the deal anymore. So they're not using Polysign. They're not using Atomic Net. They've split that off. And the main thing that they bought was the licenses. Now, my source tells me that there's no one working at Polysign anymore. And in fact, Jack McDonald, he's now left to go work at Ripple. So there's nobody there. We're going to see, like I said, the main questions I have, what's left at the Polysign entity? What patents do they have? What IP's left? Apparently there's no employees working there. I'm going to show you, here are the patents that they have. preventing a transmission of an incorrect copy of a record of data to a distributed ledger system. This one was filed in September of 2022, and the patent was awarded March 26th of this year. So they just got this patent. Inventors, David Schwartz, Arthur Brito, which, guys, I could do a whole separate video on Arthur Brito. This guy in the shadows, creator of the XRP ledger, helped found Ripple, and then helps fund and create Polysign here, and is still filing for patents. He's still helping to create this technology. Arthur Brito. I'm going to do a whole separate video on him. But David Schwartz, I mean, these guys are still part of this. Now, Kaiman right here, I can't say his last name, but this gentleman right here, he has now left the company as well, right? So basically most people have left this company at this point. There is no really employees working in this business on a day-to-day basis anymore, from what my sources told me. Master key escrow process. Now, my main question is this the atomic net patent? This master key escrow process. I was reading through this patent and I don't see anything about atomic net settlement. And I scoured all of the patent websites. I looked all through Google. I looked through Twitter, and you can see, these are the rest of these patents there. So they got 5-6 patents that I can find under the Polysign entity. I looked under the atomic net entity. Is there any patents here? I can't find any. Now, when you go to the Atomic Net website, which is right here, they have the white paper, they have a sandbox that you can play with, and you can contact them. That's about it. They have the white paper here listed, but nowhere in the white paper, nowhere in this, do they actually cite a patent for Atomic Net, which I thought that they had. And like I said, maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe, part of this is kind of the Atomic Net patent in one of these other patents that they filed for. I don't know. So maybe I'm wrong on that. And you guys can help me out in the comments down below, or send me just go to zachrector.com if you want to get in touch with me. And if you guys have any additional, information, intel on this at all, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know what you got. And let me know if you guys can find the Atomic Net patent, because I can't, unless it's tied in with those other patents that they got. So, like I said, here's where we're at. I still on Link 2 right now, trading is not available. It's just black. It's locked out. They're saying it's not available, so they're not selling anymore private equity for Polysign, but they're not allowing investors to sell it either. So right now, there's no market for Polysign. So even if you are invested, there's really nothing that you're able to do right now. And we don't know what's going to happen. As far as what happens next, I don't know. What I'm in the middle of still trying to find out is what IP's left, what patents are left, what assets are left. Is there any employees left? Is anybody there? Is this just an empty, shell company at this point? Because clearly all of the other assets have been divvied up. And it seems like the way that this is being marketed is, let's cover this up. Let's move on. Jack, come aboard. We're going to press on. That New York license is absolutely massive for Ripple. But as far as Polysign, the company, the investors, I'm sorry to say, I don't know what happens next. And we're going to be following up on this further as this story continues. I got reached out to by this source. I wanted to take 48 hours to research and vet and do my due diligence. And a lot of the information that I found was actually public and already had kind of been talked about. But then being able to hear from somebody on, source directly, confirming some of our worst fears about this situation, it's not looking good. I wish I had better news to report on. This is not looking good. I will follow up with more. Like I said, if you have any information, if you invested in Polysign, you can send me any information or reach out to me at zachrector.com. If you appreciate this update, and like I said, I'm going to bring the good, the news, good, the bad, and the ugly. I got an allegiance to bringing you guys the information and the news that matters most in a transparent way where you guys know what I've thrown my money at. And I almost threw my money at this too. I'll be honest with you guys. I was ready to jump all over this opportunity. I was this close. And I was at the point where I was about to start doing my due diligence into all of this stuff that I'm talking about in this video here today. Who's actually using it? Where are the patents? We got a couple different entities. Who owns what? And then out of the blue, we have Boathouse Capital calling this loan due, this loan due, and the whole thing gets split apart. So that's where we're at with Polysign. If you appreciate the update, please help me out by liking this video, sharing it out far and wide. I'm going to keep you guys up to date. Everything else is at my website, zachrector.com. I appreciate all of your support, and I will see you in the next one. God bless you all. I am your host, Zach Rector. I really appreciate all of the love and support. If you want to support the channel, just remember that you can start by smashing that thumbs up for me, sharing this content far and wide, and everything else is at my website.